my president, guest speaker, engineer, Kenneth Obedu.
Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be in your midst. It's my pleasure to be in your midst. And, thank you very much, President, for the invitation. While he's setting that up, I think I can let's put the title on the screen so that the conversation can start while he's setting up. And
can we close
a simple.
We'll just think for this one.
Expect.
It's not fine.
It's okay.
Okay.
Tree planting as a tool for climate action. We're going to talk about climate action, which is probably the key word here. I like the action. So advancing environmental sustainability. How do we keep our environment sustainable? That's a word we heard a lot. So how do we do that? Now, let me just bring two facts to bear. Two facts to bear quickly. That's the map of Italy. Now, in 2024, the world lost over 30 million hectares of land. And that's about the size of Italy. Annually, on the average, the world loses about 10 million hectares of land. And if we continue at that rate, by 2050, we'll kind of be in trouble. When you hear deforestation, that's what we are talking about. Imagine the size of Italy being lost every year. Now, why we have that speed in losing forest? How easy is it to grow a forest? Let's look at it. In 10 to 20 years, you have a miniature forest. This is kind of thing that you can have if you plant mango trees around your house. In 10 to 20 years, you have a little forest. In 30 to 50 years, you have productive forest, where the trees are now big, animals begin to stay. Now it takes 80 to 100 years to have a real forest, where you now have tree covers and the rest. And then to have what we call primary forest, the kind of forest in the village when you enter, it's cold inside because everywhere is covered. And on the floor you have leaves. And then the ecosystem, the biodiversity is out of this world. It takes over 140 to 250 years. It can seem scary. We need that long to grow a primary forest, and then we are losing primary forest fast. But I wanted to share these thoughts to help us get into this conversation. Quite an interesting thought. 1905, does that date strike any chord?
The formation of Rotary.
Interesting. Now, Rotary was formed in 1905 by how many people? Four people in the first meeting. How many districts?
0.
Okay, let's say 0 to 1, right?
Yeah.
Interestingly. Now, Paul Harris made a statement that will form a background to our conversation. What Rotary will be 100 years hence? 100 years from now. No non-living can imagine. Yes, we are actually by 100 years from them. So now, when you look at planting forest and you compare to this statement, what we do now, it may look small, it may look insignificant. 4 people gathered in a room, it looked insignificant, but at the 10th anniversary, they made this statement. 100 years, nobody could actually imagine that we'll be in Wuse 2, and I'll be here speaking. I'm not sure he could even imagine.
Not at all.
One Kenneth Obedu, when they tell him, he can't even pronounce my name, but nobody could imagine, but here we are. So, as we talk about climate action, let's bear this at the back of it, that every tree we plant, you can't imagine what it will be in 100 years. And so we're not giving up on climate action. Now I'm going to talk about climate change, and I'm going to move into climate action. Now what is climate change? Long-term shift in temperature and weather patterns. Now, from our basic geography, we know that there are always changes in weather. That's why when you say the weather of a place is over a long period, but when there are long-term shifts in weather patterns, we call it climate change. What causes this? Burning fossil fuels. Now, the interesting thing about why climate change has become an issue now is, instead of it happening naturally, activities of men have accelerated climate change. So that's what we are talking. When we say fossil fuel, it includes the car we are driving, includes the plane, and then of course a lot of that deforestation. I'm going to talk about this later. Industrial agriculture. I've seen farms of 250 hectares, 500 hectares. What we do, that's industrial agriculture. I'm going to talk about that, show one or two pictures. Manufacturing and industries. When you go around places where there are a lot of industries, you see that there are tall chimneys and smoke coming out. All of them contribute to climate change because of the CO2 emission. Overconsumption and waste. Now, when you hear overconsumption, you know, when you eat more than you should, and then there is waste. There is waste. You know, there are places where food prepared one day are thrown in the dustbin the next day.
Yes.
Of course, some people are trying to solve that problem by, let's give it to the less privileged, but some people won't. I know countries that dump wheat in the sea. You know why? They don't want to put it in the market so that the price will not drop. So all of those things are waste. So all of them contribute to climate change. What is the impact? Intensification of extreme weather. How many of us knew Abuja was extra hot this extreme weather, right?
It's always been extremely hot.
I think this year was
No.
I think this year combined with lack of power.
Yeah.
Has a way of making
It's always been hot.
extremely
Yeah.
rising sea
Sea
levels
level,
and
yeah.
oceans change. We'll see some pictures, threats of global food and water security. Now let me talk about water security, very interesting. Trees absorb water from the ground and it evaporates from their leaves. And then that water is part of it that forms the cloud and causes rain. So without trees, nobody to, as it were, pull water out from the ground. So the only place where evaporation happens are rivers. So that reduces how much water security we have when it comes to rain. The word is biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse. Now when we say biodiversity, some people don't think that cockroaches have any part to play in nature. Cockroaches, they have a part. It's biodiversity, right? Sometimes we are not able to identify what part they play. But when they get missing, you realize that things are not very balanced. Same thing with the forest. You kill all the lions. You have created an imbalance in the jungle. Something will not be exactly the way it's supposed to be. So that's the thing about biodiversity. Of course, ecosystem collapse. Then what else? Of course, human health and economic crisis based on that. Now, let me talk about extreme weather. One of the things we talked about. I'll show us a few pictures here. These are personal experiences. I've been in Niger State since 2014. So these are actually personal experiences. This picture, I don't know if we can see it clearly. What's in the upper picture?
Grasses, yes.
No, look at it properly.
The upper one?
Yes, the upper
Is
picture.
that rice?
That's a rice farm.
Yes.
The lower picture was taken from the same location.
Wow.
Less than 1 month apart. Yes. We couldn't harvest all our rice. Same location. Now, these two, that's me. That's me. These two pictures were taken in the same location. Less than 1.5 months apart. Now, by the time it became like this water you are seeing, there was supposed to be rice under. We couldn't enter the same place where I was standing. We couldn't enter. To access some of the part of the farm, we had to use a boat on top of what was supposed to be a rice farm. Same location. And now this is Mina. If you've gone to Niger State a lot, first part of Niger, just before you enter the town, Chamnge, that's the early part. Is anybody from Niger State here? No, okay, I've been around all of Niger State. This is drought. So now, on one hand, you have this erosion. On the other hand, you have drought. So when we say extreme weather, you find that both of them, in their different way, affect our food security. Because all of this was supposed to be a pepper farm that suffered this drought. Now, we lost a lot of rice here. So that's that. Now, this was also something I saw a lot in Niger State, and this will lead us to where we are going to today. This is wood, this is charcoal. Now, it was so bad that when I see people cutting wood, you think that they should have alternative fuel. But when you see the people cutting the wood, you realize that they can barely afford food.
True.
Not to talk of fuel to cook it. So you see the way they scavenge for wood. And as they do that deforestation. Now, two is the charcoal. instead of wood, the people in town use charcoal. And to get charcoal, you need to burn a lot of wood. So when they don't use wood, they use charcoal. And at the end of the day, for those people, it's also economic survival. And at the end, we have deforestation. Now, this farm is interesting. That's a combined harvester harvesting rice. That's me, right?
Yes.
Look at that picture in the middle. You can tell that it looks as if the sun is burning up, right?
Yes.
Same farm. That's the village chief for the farm. Now, if you look at something interesting about the farm, let me point out something to you. You see that tree?
Yes.
That tree is the only tree within our farm here was 74 hectares.
Wow.
Now, let me put it in perspective. 1 hectare is 3 football fields. So imagine over 200 football fields.
Wow.
You only have that tree. But the funny thing about that tree is that tree was not actually inside our plot.
Okay.
So I had to get to the end of our farm
To stay on the
and cross into somebody's
To
farm
be
to stay
sheltered.
under the tree.
Wow.
Now, so you see how I look here, right?
Yes.
The sun, this was November, trying to harvest rice. The sun almost ate me up. My car, at the time, I got the round one with my glasses. All of this from deforestation. To get a stick inside this farm, you need to go far and far.
Wow.
74 hectares, not a single tree. Now, what are the effects of the deforestation? Of course. Now, this is where it ties to what we're talking about. Acceleration of climate change. As deforestation happens, loss of biodiversity. Look, even the birds that live on those trees, if you cut the tree, they are gone. Of course, it makes it easier for them to be hunted or they migrate. If they don't find a home, it actually becomes easier for them to die. Disruption of the water cycle. I spoke about this earlier. Severe soil erosion and flooding. When you have trees, it reduces how quick water can wash away sand. So soil erosion and flooding, and of course, threats to human health and livelihood. Now, what makes trees important in our matter before we get into tree planting? 46% of global CO2 is absorbed by trees and forests. Now, we understand that CO2 is what causes greenhouse gases that cause the ozone layer to be depleted, which increases the whole climate change thing. Now, if we plant enough trees, we can reduce the temperature of the world by 2 degrees. And then finally, if we are able to plant up to 1 million trees, we can actually reverse climate change. Now, change is happening is not a problem, but the rate at which it is happening is what has made it a problem. Now, having looked at climate change, let's look at climate action. This one now puts the thing on our table. What can we do? Now, what is climate action? Any purposeful effort taken by individuals, organizations, and governments to address climate change and its consequences. Understand that it is purposeful effort. Yes, whether individuals, organizations, and governments. Somehow we are captured there. You are Tinubu, you are captured in government, organizations, the Rotary is captured, individuals. Any of those things we do to help address climate change is what is called climate action. While we are talking about climate change, why don't we think of climate action? Because we can actually do something about it. So that's what this conversation is about. And 3 things we can do, but I'll focus on one. Mitigation. Mitigation says, what can we do to reduce it? Like reducing CO2 emission from cars, factories, planes, and all of those things. That's mitigation. Adaptation. Adaptation is saying, okay, now climate change is happening. What are the things we can do to be resilient, to survive, to bounce back, to manage climate change? And then this is where I am actually concerned. Nature-based solution. What are the natural ways we can help combat climate change? So that's where we get into tree planting as a tool for climate change. Now remember the thought of Polaris, right? It may look like one tree, but nobody knows if we put one tree and the second tree and the third tree 100 years from now. You can't imagine what we could have done. So now let's look at some places where we can bring this to bear. Our home, office and workplace, and then our environments. We can all put a tree. Now, how many people do we have in the world about now?
7 billion and
7
40.
billion, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there are children, there are elderly. So let's remove 1 billion from two sides.
Okay.
If everybody put up a tree, how many trees are we going to have?
Wow.
6 billion trees, right? Let's say 1 tree per year. That's not, is that too much?
Not at all.
Too much. So our home, our workplace, our offices, the little we think we are doing, remember Paul Harris, can actually multiply. Now, community-based tree planting. If we take it to the next level and the community comes together and plant trees, it makes a lot of difference. Now, let me tell you guys a small experience. I'm sure some of us who visit the villages around Christmas or any of those times, when you are walking down some paths in the village, I mean village, not the town before your village, your real village.
Core village.
There's this fog you see, early morning.
Early morning, yes.
My children will say it's smoke. They actually, my daughter said and said it's smoke, looking at it in front. Now that thing is only possible because of the number of trees in the village. You can't find that in Abuja because we don't have trees. So if a community has trees or plants trees like it is in the village, the place is cooler. There's flood. You see that farm I told you about, right? It was terrible walking there.
Wow.
Terrible. That you have to walk to go sit on that tree. And then it was my business to supervise harvest, right? While the machine is working. So if I walk away, I'm not supervising. To supervise, I have to come and stay in that zone. Cooler, cleaner air. Therefore, we talk about flood, and then when we talk about food security, there are some things I miss living in Abuja. One of them is avocado care. I'm sorry. I grew up in a village. Now that's a tree. But as long as we keep cutting down trees, it affects food security because I keep wondering, there are just a few people who actually go to consciously plant avocado care. Before they just grew in the village and we had enough, but now we are kind of running out of them. So that's community based. Now, this is interesting. Engaging farmers and agricultural stakeholders. I like the thought here. Trees and farming are not opposite, they are partners. Agroforestry increases yields, protects soil, and builds climate resilience. Now, our general thinking in agriculture in Nigeria is that first we have to burn the land, then we have to cut all the trees. But they can go side by side. Imagine you have, take for example, 50 hectares, and along all the edges and across, there are trees. It could be fruit trees, it could be just any tree all around, so that if your tractor is walking boundary, if that's why you want, your tractor can walk in between. It has all the space to walk. Why you have trees lined around, so that it's not, do we farm or do we have trees? You know that's the way it is. We go into a forest and cut all the trees. No, we can have trees and we can have agriculture side by side. That's for that. And then advocacy. Actually, this kind of conversation we are doing here can go beyond here, schools, workshops, communities, and institutions. So that the whole essence of this is to move us from awareness into action. Now we know. Let's talk about climate change, but I've focused more on climate action. Awareness to action. What do we do? Every tree counts. Now, like I said, if everybody plants 1 tree a year, 6 billion this year, 6 billion next year, before you know, a lot will happen. And then, of course, Rotary Prize talks about service above self, right? So that beyond us, we are also doing something for the planet. Plant 1 tree, looks small, but if we all plant 1, something will happen. Advocate in the community. Now, one of the things I have challenged, I'm from the construction background, right? I still do construction. When I get into a site, I'm doing everything I can to save the trees on the site.
Wow.
Yes, between me and my client and design and how we sit the building, or worst case scenario, if we take out a tree there, we are planning on how to make sure that there are trees coming back into the compound. You don't want to build everywhere and interlock the rest of the spaces. Have you entered a compound that has interlock in the afternoon?
Of course.
The heat coming out from the ground,
Yes.
we are just, so a tree somewhere, even if it's flower actually, it's better than no tree. So that's my little space. Of course, engage farmers, schools, and then share and inspire others. I'll close with this quote. Somebody said, a Chinese proverb says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And then the second best time is what?
No.
So let's begin. 1, 3, at a time. Thank you all very much.